On the morning of March 15th, 44 BC, a 55-year-old man walked into a crowded hall without a single bodyguard. He had dismissed them himself weeks earlier, after the Senate swore a public oath to protect him. Within minutes, he would be dead on the floor of that hall, and several of the men who killed him would be bleeding from wounds they had given each other. You know this scene. You know the line. Here is the problem. He never said it. Not in one single ancient source. And what he actually did in his last seconds is stranger and colder than the version Shakespeare gave us. This is what really happened on the Ides of March. By the winter of 44 BC, Julius Caesar had won everything there was to win. Gaul, the civil war against Pompey, Egypt, North Africa, Spain. There was no rival army left in the Roman world, and in February, the Senate gave him a title no Roman had ever held. Dictator perpetuo, dictator for life. To understand why that word detonated, you have to understand how Roman power worked. Every office had an expiry date. Consuls served 1 year. A dictator was an emergency measure, 6 months, and then you handed it back. The whole system rested on a single assumption that nobody is indispensable. Perpetuo deleted the expiry date. His face went onto Roman coins while he was still alive, the first living Roman ever minted. He was given a gilded chair to sit in while senators stood, and some historians argue the Senate was not flattering him. It was building a case. Every honor they voted him made him look less like a magistrate and more like a king. The oldest insult in the Roman language, and the one crime the Republic had been founded to prevent. February 15th, the festival of Lupercalia. Mark Antony runs through the crowd half naked as the ritual demanded, and stops in front of Caesar holding a diadem, a white band. The thing Hellenistic kings wore, he offers it. Caesar refuses. The crowd cheers. He offers it again. Caesar refuses again. The crowd cheers louder. Plutarch describes it like a piece of theater because that is what it was. The only question is whose theater? Was Caesar testing the city to see how far he could go? Was Antony trying to force his hand? We do not know, and nobody in the crowd knew either. To the men already whispering in private houses, the answer did not matter. A crown had been offered in public, in front of the Roman people, and the man had not walked away in disgust. He had made a performance of refusing it. Weeks later, his statue went up on the Capitol in the line of Rome's ancient kings. That was the moment the clock started. The conspiracy begins with Gaius Cassius Longinus. Cassius had fought against Caesar in the Civil War, been pardoned by him, and then been given a post, but not the one he wanted. The senior praetorship went to a younger man, to Brutus. So is this principle, or was it a grudge? Plutarch's answer is uncomfortable and probably correct. Both. Cassius genuinely believed the Republic was dying. He also could not forgive being second. But Cassius understood something about himself that most conspirators never work out. He knew he was not enough. A plot led by Cassius would look like a quarrel between ambitious men. He needed a name that made murder look like duty. Marcus Junius Brutus was 41 years old, and his surname was a political argument all by itself. 465 years earlier, Lucius Junius Brutus had driven the last king out of Rome and founded the Republic. Every Roman schoolboy knew it. The family had a bronze statue on the Capitol to prove it, and Caesar had spared this Brutus after the Battle of Pharsalus, promoted him, trusted him. Brutus's mother, Servilia, had been Caesar's lover for years, which is where the rumor comes from, that Brutus was his son. The chronology makes that almost impossible. Caesar was about 15 when Brutus was born. Then the notes began appearing. On the magistrate's chair where Brutus sat to hear cases, someone left messages. Brutus, you are asleep. You are not a true Brutus. At the foot of his ancestor's statue, if only you were alive now. Plutarch says it was Cassius who arranged for them to be found. It worked. Brutus joined. And the moment he did, 60 men could tell themselves they were not assassins. They were liberators. Where do you kill the most protected man in the world? Not in the street. Too many strangers, too many soldiers. Not at his house, too many of his own people. So they chose the one room where all of them had a right to stand next to him, unquestioned: the Senate. Senators carried writing tablets in wooden cases. A case that holds a stylus also holds a dagger. They picked the 15th of March because the Senate was meeting that day in the Curia of Pompey, a hall attached to Pompey's theater complex, used because the old Senate house had burned down 8 years earlier, and because 3 days later, Caesar was leaving Rome to invade Parthia, possibly for years. It was now or it was never. One question split them. Antony. Cassius wanted him killed in the same hour. He was loyal, he was capable, and he was a consul. Brutus refused. Killing a second man would make them a faction instead of liberators. This had to look like a surgical act of principle, not a purge. Brutus won the argument. Remember that. Everything that follows comes out of that one decision. Caesar was warned repeatedly. That is not legend. It is in every source we have. A haruspex named Spurina had told him weeks earlier that great danger would come no later than the Ides of March. The night before, his wife Calpurnia dreamt of his death and begged him not to go. He woke up unwell. He was, by most accounts, genuinely close to canceling. So the conspirators sent the one man who could move him: Decimus Brutus Albinus, not Marcus, a different Brutus. One of Caesar's closest friends, a general he had trusted for a decade, and a man named in his will. Decimus came to the house and made the argument the way a friend makes it. Do you really want to send word to a Senate that has been waiting since dawn and tell them to go home because your wife had a bad dream? Caesar went. On the way in, he passed Spurina and said with a smile, "The Ides of March have come." And Spurina said, "Yes, but they are not gone." Then a Greek teacher named Artemidorus of Cnidus pushed through the crowd and forced a scroll into his hand. Artemidorus taught the sons of several conspirators. He had written down the plot. Names, method, everything. Caesar took the scroll. He kept it in his hand. He was still holding it unread when he walked into the hall. They carried him through Rome in a litter. Petitioners reached in with requests, the way they always did. A city of 1 million people, and every one of them wanted something. Below the theater, a troop of gladiators waited in the portico. Decimus had brought them, officially for the games, unofficially in case the Senate fought back. Antony walked in beside Caesar. At the door, Trebonius took his arm and started a conversation. Antony never entered the room. Caesar takes his seat. The senators rise as protocol required, and then they do not sit back down. They come towards him, the way men do when they all want to petition at once, and the circle closes. Tullius Cimber asks for his exiled brother to be recalled. Caesar refuses. Cimber asks again, closer. Caesar gestures him away, and Cimber grabs the toga at both shoulders and pulls it down. That is the signal. Casca strikes first, from behind, at the neck, and botches it. It is a graze more than a stab. Caesar spins and catches his arm, and according to Plutarch, shouts, "Casca, you villain, what are you doing?" Casca panics and calls out in Greek to his brother. Then all of them at once. Dozens of men in a space built for orderly debate, each trying to reach the same target, in a room with no way out. In the crush, they cut each other. Brutus takes a wound to the hand. Somebody's blade opens another conspirator's thigh. 23 wounds, Suetonius counts. And here's the detail nobody puts in the paintings. Afterwards, a physician named Antistius examined the body, one of the first forensic examinations we have any record of. His conclusion, of 23 stab wounds, only one was fatal. The second one, the one to the chest. They stabbed him 23 times, and 22 of those wounds were panic. Et tu, Brute. 4 words. Everyone knows them. They appear in no ancient source whatsoever. They come from the Elizabethan stage. The phrase was already circulating in English drama in the 1590s, and Shakespeare fixed it permanently in 1599. A line written 16 centuries after the event has completely replaced what the sources actually say. So what do they say? Suetonius, writing closest to the surviving evidence, states plainly that most accounts agree Caesar died without saying anything at all. He fought at first, and then he was silent. But Suetonius adds one line. Some people reported that when Caesar saw Brutus coming at him, he said in Greek, "Kai su, teknon." You too, child. And Greek is not English. That phrase is genuinely ambiguous, and classicists still argue about it. It can be heartbreak. Even you. It can also be something much harder. Kai su appears on Roman curse tablets. Read that way. It is not a plea at all. It is a threat, spoken by a dying man to the one person he had protected. You too, boy, your turn is coming. What we do know from Plutarch is what he did. When he saw that every man in the circle had a blade, he stopped resisting. He pulled the toga up over his head, covered his face, and let them finish. He fell at the base of a statue of Pompey. The man he had destroyed in the Civil War was standing over him when he died. They walked out into the street with blood on their hands and their daggers up, and they shouted that Rome was free. Nothing happened. The doors were already shut. Shopkeepers were pulling down shutters. People who had been in the Forum an hour earlier were gone. The conspirators had rehearsed the killing for weeks and had not spent 1 hour on the afternoon. They retreated up to the Capitol and waited for a city that never came. The body stayed in the hall for about 3 hours. Eventually, 3 slaves came with a litter, lifted him onto it, and carried him home through the streets, with one arm hanging over the side. Then, the will was read out in public, and the conspiracy lost, to every Roman citizen, 300 sesterces, cash, roughly a few months' wages for a laborer, paid to hundreds of thousands of people, his gardens across the Tiber, given to the city as a public park, and his principal heir adopted as his son, an 18-year-old great-nephew from a provincial family that nobody in the Senate had bothered to learn the name of. Gaius Octavius. On the 20th of March, Antony gave the funeral oration and held up the toga so the crowd could count the holes. The crowd did not wait for the funeral to reach the tomb. They tore benches and tables out of the forum, built a pyre where he lay, and burned him in the middle of the city. Then they went looking for the men who had done it. They found a poet named Helvius Cinna, confused him with the conspirator Cornelius Cinna, and pulled him apart in the street. Cassius, dead at Philippi, 42 BC. He saw riders approaching through the dust, concluded the battle was lost, and ordered his own freedmen to cut his throat. The riders were friendly. The battle was not lost. Brutus, dead by his own hand 3 weeks later, on the same field. Decimus, the friend who talked Caesar out of staying home, hunted down in Gaul in 43 BC and executed on Antony's order. Suetonius claims none of the assassins outlived Caesar by more than 3 years. None died naturally, and several killed themselves with the same daggers they had used on him. That is rhetoric as much as history. Some of the 60 simply disappear from the record, but the men who mattered were all dead inside 30 months, and that part is true. They killed him to save the Republic. 4 months later, a comet appeared over Rome during the games held in Caesar's memory and stayed visible for 7 days. The crowd decided it was his soul. 2 years after that, the Senate voted him a god, Divus Julius. The man they murdered for acting like a king was now formally divine, and the teenager in the will had inherited both the money and the name. Within 17 years, that teenager was Augustus, and the Roman Republic was gone. Not abolished. Nobody ever announced it, just quietly replaced office by one man who was careful never to use the word king. Rome got its monarch anyway. The conspirators had aimed at a man and hit an idea, and the idea did not die. It just learned to stop asking permission. They should have listened to Cassius about Antony. If you want more of the stories behind the lines everyone quotes and nobody checks, subscribe. New films on the old ways every week.